Steam's a weird place. On a platform with zero barrier to entry, it's no shock that some people made some questionable games and decided to share them with the world. I'm sure everybody who uses PC has been scrolling through some game deals, checking the sales category, and you find a few games that you're interested in. Oh shit, Skyrim's $5 right now. Man, that'd be cool to play. And then you go down like one or two more games, and it's fucking Sex with Hitler 2. Now, regardless of the fact that this was recommended to me based on my search history is irrelevant, the point here is that there are some weird games on Steam and I am all for it. But there's a few different types of weird out there. There's weird stuff from a gameplay perspective that just doesn't make a lot of sense. There's weird shit in terms of a game just being about an absolutely ridiculous concept, and then there's just really weird, disturbing games. I went on a deep dive on some of the strangest games ever put on Steam, and I found some shit alright. Now, you might be wondering how I decided to search for these games, but the answer's a lot less interesting than you might think. I started with a few basic Google searches and found a couple of games to look into, but the main way I discovered more than half of these games was just going into Steam, setting the price below $10, and just scrolling. Obviously, most of the games made it into the video, but a lot of it was way too much to put on YouTube, and quite frankly, I don't ever want to talk about what I've seen ever again. But let's start off with a more mild game. Kindergarten. Kindergarten's a game I'm sure a lot of you recognize, but for those of you who are lucky enough not to, let me give you the rundown. Kindergarten released back in 2017 and immediately got ran through by the YouTube playthrough community with Markiplier, Jack, all the usual suspects. This game is sort of a choose-your-own-adventure game of sorts where we need to complete a bunch of tasks to solve a murder mystery about a fellow student. To solve the mystery, you need to complete a bunch of different storylines of each of your classmates spread across the different periods of the day. Each period gives you an amount of apples which indicate how much time you have left to spend, and certain key actions use up an apple, so you'll need to plan your moves carefully. There are riddles to solve, specific items you'll need to bring to complete a different path, other items that need to be bought with the in-game currency, and missing a single step can mean completely restarting the day. But it's in each of these storylines where you'll start to notice that shit gets kinda weird, but also pretty funny. There are so many times where you'll just choose the wrong options and just get brutally murdered for looking where you shouldn't have. But should you complete a storyline to its fullest, you'll get a special key item given to you by the character you completed. These items can be brought back to further your quest and finish out the game, but let's just talk about the characters for a minute. I think most recognizably there's Nugget, who's just a generally fucked up individual. He poisons you, the other students, and he just kinda looks a little incoherent. There's the janitor, who's a serial killer who won't hesitate to impale you with a mop. Bugs, who just robs you if you exceed $3 and gives you a fucking shiv. Mrs. Applegate, who regularly insinuates that you should kill the other students. It's a colorful, diverse roster. But this game definitely earns its spot on this list. The main murder mystery is about a kid named Billy who was previously Nugget's best friend who was suddenly expelled. You quickly find out that the principal and janitor aren't exactly nice people. The janitor killed one of the girl's dogs and is using the meat to feed her. Billy was kidnapped by the principal. Nugget has a bomb on him that activates if he mentions Billy. Just this. The story progresses with us discovering that Billy was actually locked up and experimented on by the principal after discovering that the janitor was disposing of the other bodies. When confronted about this, the principal decides to try and kill you, but after releasing one of the mysterious creatures, he gets dismembered. But instead of that, you can just have fun and use C4 to murder the janitor, whatever floats your boat. But a lot of people missed out on the secret ending the game features after collecting every single Monster Mon card. Talking to Nugget in a secret cove after doing so allows you to perform a ritual that just like straight up murders everyone through some sort of divine intervention. I don't know. Obviously, this is an homage to the Satanic Panic Pokemon got caught up in, but regardless, it's kind of fucking weird. Now, I haven't dabbled with Kindergarten 2 quite yet, but this is a great game. It has a fantastic sense of humor, especially the part where you play house and you're an alcoholic. It's great. And you know what? The game does constantly aim to be funny. But let's move on to something a bit weirder, but in a different way. Trump loves Russia. Yep. This game I just couldn't wait to get my hands on. From the second I saw this game's title, I didn't even look at the gameplay, I just added it to my cart and booted it up. This is a third-person shooter slash zombie game, sort of, and I don't even know where to start on describing this game. For starters, I guess the plot's pretty simple. We're a Russian soldier or something, and the alien dude Nikolai gives us a task to prepare to free Trump. I don't know. Of course, naturally, to free someone from a prison, the necessary ingredients are 7 containers of detergent, 3 kebabs, and 3 bottles of vodka. Sounds like a recipe for a wild time, I guess. Upon getting into the gameplay, this immediately reminded me of just a really scuffed COD Zombies. You'll get swarmed by normal zombies, zombies with guns, zombies that explode, I mean, you name it. Killing the zombies gives you points that you can use to purchase other guns, and that's basically the full extent of the COD Zombies comparison because, this game's kinda ass. What makes the COD Zombie series so great in general is the satisfying gunplay for the casual audience alongside the secrets and long-term objectives for the hardcore people. This game technically does have some Easter egg-like steps, I suppose, but the gunplay is fucking miserable. I can hardly tell when I've actually killed an enemy, and you never really get properly swarmed by a horde. Not to mention the full extent of the unlockable weapons in this game is a pistol, an assault rifle, and another assault rifle with ricochet rounds, which I guess could actually be pretty interesting if the game wasn't already basically over. After scouring the military base for kebabs and other various items, we return to Nikolai, who gives us a code to Trump's bunker where we free him and he just kinda starts breaking it down and shaking his ass. This game's amazing actually, I take everything back. This prompts a Russian soldier to get into literally just a bigger Panzer Soldat and chase you around. The game also decides to throw you a bone and give you an assault rifle for the boss fight, but gives you no indication on how to kill it. Now my first time around I actually tried to take this thing head on, but I realized pretty quickly that it had way too much HP and I was out of ammo really quickly with no way to get more. So I restarted and basically just farmed zombies for a couple of minutes before buying new guns and finishing out the fight, which to my surprise just like straight up ended the game. That was it. No more missions, nothing else, and I have to say, I'm just left with my cock in my hands here, absolutely blue ball. I wanted a full-scale game of this, and I didn't get it. I checked the developer's page to maybe get my hands on a sequel, but there was nothing to work with. Actually, most of this dude's catalogs is just games exactly like this, but with furries as the main enemies, which, I mean, kind of base to be honest, but you know what, this guy's clearly a visionary and he's making art for the masses to appreciate, so let's move on to another game I'm pretty excited about, which is called Brief Karate Foolish. Karate Foolish released all the way back in 2016 to generally pretty positive reviews, and this game is definitely its own breed. I mean, just look at it. To clap back at fighting games constantly over-sexualizing women, Karate Foolish instead makes the entire cast of characters Japanese dudes in nothing but boxer briefs, and it's spectacular. There's honestly a fairly diverse cast of characters to pick from, and if I had to compare this game to another fighting game, it'd probably have to be the earlier Street Fighter games. Each character has a light, medium, and heavy attack from standing, crouching, and air alongside 3 special attacks. And I know those of you who are well versed in fighting game terminology don't really need an explanation, but allow me to explain this in English to people who don't have a mental illness. Games like this are mainly played around the idea of footsies, constantly coming in and out of attack range and poking away at your opponent while keeping yourself safe. But as opposed to other, better fighting games out there, games like this and Street Fighter allow you to combo out of your most basic jab by what's called special canceling. Once a combo starts up, most games have a form of damage scaling where each consecutive hit in a combo does say 80% of its normal damage, then 70, then 60, you get the idea. This game just doesn't have it at all, meaning it's actually a pretty viable strategy to just use a bunch of light attacks at the beginning of a combo because once you get your opponent to the corner, the damage is just absurd. Now, as we all know, people who say they like fighting games are lying and it's a form of self-torture, so play this at your own risk, or play the Tekken games, which are just the superior fighting game. Get shit on, Mortal Kombat fans. Now, the acute observer might notice something pretty subtle about this game, which is that it looks like fucking shit. Now, I'm not sure if this was completely intentional or not, but the game runs in I think 480p, and man, it just looks horrible. For some reason, the weird resolution made this game a pain in the ass to record, but I have a little over 70 minutes of playtime, so I'm basically an expert on the game. I managed to find a tournament of this game, and it's actually kind of cool to watch. Characters like Zoro seem to be a little busted to say the least, and balancing is more of a vague suggestion for the game, but here's the thing, the game's completely free, so if you're curious about the game, I highly recommend just downloading it and getting a couple of friends over to mess around with. Fair warning though, the sound is a little poorly balanced when you initially launch it, so keep your speakers low. Our next game is called John Christian, and oh boy. This is one of those games that I actually kinda feel bad for making fun of, but it's just too funny not to. As the title might have alluded to, this is a religious game about a kid named John Christian, and I need to set the lens to look at this game through here. This game was made in Portuguese, meaning the person's primary language is probably not English, and I think the fact that he wrote a character named John Christian into his game is just fucking amazing. It sounds like something ChatGPT would cook up. This is a biblical themed adventure, or as the game description puts it, a story of heroism of a young man after receiving the armor of God goes in search of imprisoned lives. Here we go. You know a game is just going to be great when these are the loading screens you're dealing with. Dear God, just look at the gameplay. Take a minute to let all of this sink in. I don't know a ton about game engines or development in general, but this just feels like something that was made with the free assets. I mean, just look at John Christian, man. He looks like a fucking dork. If I saw this man on the street, he would get jumped immediately. Now, John Christian gameplay-wise is essentially a platformer sort of that gives you a bunch of arbitrary objectives, each of them having collectible Bibles that just straight up put a full Bible verse on the side of your screen. I mean, this is incredible. And holy shit, look at this, man. The in-game directive is to go into prayer and ask God for help. I genuinely wonder if the dude who made this intended you to set the controller down and just get on your knees. It is such a funny mental image, man. Now, once you've asked God for help, he'll decide to make some translucent platforms for us to jump across, and right after we encounter a group of werewolves that shoot blow darts at us. Gotta keep it together. Now, after hauling ass from these werewolves with blow darts, we come to a fountain where a priest or someone is just sitting there and blesses us. I don't know, this really isn't a baptism, is it? This is just, really uncomfortable. What the fuck? We are now in Spartan armor that is extremely poorly sized. Look, I'm no stranger to the world of Jesus, alright? I was raised in the Bible Belt per se, but I don't think ever once does the Bible mention wolves with blow darts and Spartan armor that you can equip by getting hit with a lightning bolt. Now, technically there is a little mentioning of the armor of God, but I can promise you double jumping was not included. The rest of the game is basically a broken, unplayable mix between platformers and a slasher, and I don't really have the patience to get through this, so how about we spice things up a little bit more with Blood and Bacon? Blood and Bacon is a Doom-like first-person shooter about a group of hostile pigs. Now, I'm just going to be nice and throw it out there that if animal violence bothers you, skip ahead a little bit, because I get where you're coming from and this isn't going to be pretty. So just go ahead a minute or two, you're not missing much. Now that those weak-minded nerds are gone, Blood and Bacon is just a blood and guts type of game that you can just sort of turn your brain off for a while and just shoot at whatever's coming at you. The game's non-existent story starts off in a barn in the middle of nowhere where its owner's been impaled to a wall. This dude basically gives you all of your missions and rambles about nonsense for a bit. Once you get a mission though, you can go out into the yard and that's where you're going to be swarmed by any number of pigs. Each day will give you a basic mission, whether it be to just kill a few pigs and go explore a tunnel system by the silos. It's not really that interesting. There are a grand total of 101 days to grind through, and to keep things interesting, you unlock a few new weapons as you play through the game. You always have a primary and a secondary weapon. Primaries use a limited amount of ammo, while secondaries have an infinite pool to use. There's also a pool of choosable characters, and I don't think it affects the gameplay at all, but I chose the skeleton anyway. The game really shines though with its absolutely ridiculous bosses and mini-bosses that appear to test you. From extremely quick pigs that aim to rush you down to a giant fat pig that literally just has a giant scab, the aim offers quite a variety of options. And these aren't easy either. A lot of these bosses routinely got me to low HP, which can be healed at the game's designated water pumps. But instead of healing you quickly, the game makes you stand your ground as the pump needs to be used multiple times. It's actually a pretty solid mechanic. Honestly, I'm kind of struggling to find things to say about this game. It's exactly what it looks like. Senseless violence against zombie pigs that explode for no reason. There's no story to take interest in. It's literally just pig genocide simulator, which, you know, if that's your thing, good for you, man. But I mean, even the wiki description has no idea what to say about this game. I mean, Blood and Bacon is a fun game. I mean, I think ChatGPT could have done a better job. I mean, look what this dude on Steam says. Good game if you have autism. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. You know what, maybe we move on to another mild game here with Tree Simulator 2022. And yes, I know I'm playing the outdated version. I should have gotten 23, but you know, the budget for this game was a little tight, okay? Tree Simulator 2022 is an absolutely incredible game that, unbeknownst to most people, was actually the runner-up at the Game Awards up there with Elden Ring. Tree Simulator is a complete and total simulation of a tree. Now, I've put this at 10 times speed for your viewing experience, and man, this is just great. The game cycles through day and night, and I think the 4 seasons as well. Now get this. There's a multiplayer function to this where apparently your homies can hop on a server with you and add a tree. Now, I have no footage of this because I couldn't convince a single one of my friends to buy this game, so I have no evidence of this whatsoever. All I can say is Tree Simulator better win Game of the Year this time around, or we're gonna have a few issues. Our next game on the list is called The Adventurous 4, which is a visual novel and a choose-your-own-adventure game. Now, I've never really ventured into the realm of visual novels on PC, but I'll try to keep an open mind. The story starts off with a couple of newlyweds lying in bed before they get a knock on their door, which the man answers, and Jesus, that dog is on like 90 grams of fentanyl or something, man. He is geeking. The person who showed up to our home unannounced at what looks like 5 in the fucking morning is our friend Doyle, who is some sort of genius inventor. And let me tell you something really quickly. If you show up at my house at 5 in the morning with pink tinted sunglasses and a chemistry shirt, I'm gonna beat your ass on the spot, mark my words. Doyle explains to us that he has some sort of experiment that he refuses to tell us about, and he wants us to see it. And once again, dude, that dog is just severely out of place. I've been reading this for 2 minutes, and I'm convinced that that's a skinwalker, not a dog. You know that meme of the guy in Skyrim asking the Jarl to trap a dragon in his castle in the middle of the night? That's exactly what this dude must feel. Imagine your best friend showed up at your door at 5 a.m. and told you he had an idea for like an app or something. He'd be on the ground like a Family Guy character in like 10 seconds. On our way to the lab, we randomly get lifted in the air by a special looking individual, to say the least. Conan is our ex-military friend that plays the classic stupid brute role. I mean, it's as he says here. In the army, everything is simple. One kick, one open door. I'd like you to specifically note the fact that he opened the door with his hands. It turns out the invention Doyle wanted us to see is a fucking boat. Yeah, this dude's a genius, alright. And you know what, maybe I'm ripping into this game a little too much. It'll probably get a bit more interesting since we're about to go to a newly discovered island that we can only access by a balloon-held boat, which I'm pretty sure is just called a blimp, which was invented in 1852. You're 0 for 2 here, game. To prepare for the journey to an unknown island, our character puts on chainmail and a backpack, which, I mean, whatever. But Conan pulls up absolutely strapped with a shotgun and full camo. And I have to dissect this little line here. Conan, you're such a humorist. Who wrote this? Has anyone used the word humorist in the past like 50 years? I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I'm done. I need another game. How about Russophobia? Russophobia is another one of the games that I didn't even bother looking into the gameplay for, and it's just so incredibly horrible, and it's the only one that I hated enough to refund. This game is so unbelievably bad that it made people incredibly cautious of the fact that this game might be a crypto miner. I mean, think about it. There's absolutely no substance to the game, but it takes up 12 fucking gigs. The game has nothing to stress your PC, but it'll set your graphics card on fire, trust me. All of this made a collection of people convinced that this game was either malware or a crypto miner, which made me panic and investigate this fully, but I've come to the conclusion that it's probably neither. But just a quick PSA to everybody out there watching, don't assume things can't slip by Steam. If you're buying a game from a small developer that looks like an asset flip, just read a review or two first. But let's talk about what I did end up playing. This game is another oddly sexual game where for some reason we play as a rather well endowed female individual who wakes up in a room covered with literal human shit, and for some reason the Russian government tasked us with collecting everything, including money, presents, and a USB stick, which I mean, it's bizarre to say the least. The main enemies that attempt to prevent you from doing this range from like someone from 3200 BC, this man looks like a straight Neanderthal, to just like a generic horror demon. Nothing of interest. I'm not sure if this game is supposed to be particularly funny considering the amazing Trump and Biden models here, or if this is some sort of weird fetish for someone, but it's fucking weird, man. And I hated every second I played it, and I got my 50 cents back. Get fucked. But let's move on to an absolute highlight and my personal favorite game on here, Just Die Already. Just Die Already can only be described as an old person simulator, and this game is just gold sometimes. It's probably fair to say that this game was heavily inspired by Goat Simulator, and I like to think of this game as sort of a spiritual successor. Both games are pretty sandbox-like in nature, where there's no objectives other than just interacting with the world around you. You know, find treasure chests, fire mortar cannons into the ceiling, get eaten by a shark, grab the gun off a police officer's hip, whatever it is that old people do these days. And quick side note, once you're old, there's no point in not doing all of these things in real life. I mean, that 70-year sentence doesn't mean shit if you have 3 weeks left to live, you know? If I live to be 80, I'm gonna be drunk driving every night, going 100 in a school zone, quote me on that shit, frame it, put it in an art gallery, I'm gonna be a menace, and you better pray I die at 35. The game starts you off in a nursing home where you need to start the game by breaking out, or more specifically, just raising hell and getting kicked out. And it's here you're gonna get familiar with the bizarre controls, to say the least. These are gonna take a while to make sense. Your character effectively has 4 slots to carry shit. 2 of these are your hands, which function completely independently of one another, but other items can be equipped, freeing up your hands for other mischievous activities. Now, by far the most unexpected part of the game is that you will just casually get dismembered on the spot by like literally anything. Your arms get torn off easily, you can lose a leg and limp around the map, or even just go down to a torso. The game loves its gore. You can get dismembered by a lobster, praying menace, a car, you name it. But of course, provided you enjoy having arms and legs most of the time, you can always reset your body by respawning at the closest dumpster. The way you progress in the game is always of course completely dependent on what the player wants, but it always revolves around getting some kind of different weapon. By completing weird tasks on your bucket list, you can get access to different weapons you can pull from the nearby vending machines, but while exploring, you'll inevitably discover a few golden keys laying around. These can be used to unlock one of many golden doors you'll see around the town. These can range from generic gun stores full of weapons to a fireworks shop, a fucking mortar cannon, you know, more goodies from the goodie bag. Of course though, it goes without any saying that while it's a fun experience to just hop on and dick around by yourself, the real fun is when you get a friend or two to hop on and shit just gets crazy. Yeah, as you can see, it's a chaotic game, it's great, you can usually find it on sale for $1 or $2, just get whatever friends you might have and have some fun. What if George Washington was a girl? A fair question, I suppose, but with a horribly boring answer if you look at it objectively. Thankfully, this game doesn't aim to do anything with the actual hypothetical, and this is yet another acid trip visual novel. You'd think the game might take a somewhat objective look into what would actually change if George Washington was a girl, but no, this game is just a random story, and George Washington being Georgia Washington is a completely irrelevant detail. The game opens up with the classic Star Wars style wall of text that gives us some pretty insane information to process. So first off, right off the bat, Mozart in this game is the antagonist and seeks to capture Antarctica, which is potentially the most useless plan ever. There's a pretty good reason why no one owns Antarctica, but you know what, I'm sure the game explains it. Apparently, George Washington in this world is a Templar Knight of the United Kingdoms, which wasn't formed for another, I don't know, 200-300 years from this point. This is where the game picks up with Georgia and Teddy Roosevelt, who's literally just a furry coming across the evil, now female Mozart who has some sort of music powers. Now, I think the game is pretty self-aware judging by the humor it throws in, and I love that a translator is needed to talk to people who speak in Old English. Mozart hits Teddy with a fucking Hadouken or something, then throws a penguin at us and runs away. I hope you're starting to understand the level of writing I'm working with here. About 6 seconds after you track down Teddy, the fucking BDSM warrior pulls up on us to yap for another 10 minutes. None of the dialogue is skippable in this game either, by the way, so I had to sit through all of this. The BDSM person forces us to go to their facility and get bored to death for another few minutes, so I'm just gonna wrap this game up. The fact that there are quite literally 5 stock PNGs of Georgia that are just copy-pasted into different environments tells me everything I need to know. And I know it's pretty typical, but it's not even like they bother moving them around. It is the exact same positioning. But let's move on to something really weird. Shower with your dad simulator. Yeah, do I even have to say anything about this one? Now, I hope YouTube plays ball with me here and doesn't just clap my ass with age restrictions, but I'm gonna have to run the risk either way. Shower with your dad simulator is the perfect definition of weird. You play as a child who is looking for his dad in a public shower room. There are 3 dads you have to choose from, each having distinct enough skin and hair colors. Your job is to determine which one of them is your father to progress. From a gameplay perspective, it's pretty normal time-based challenges, but they chose the weirdest possible lens for this, man. There's a time rush challenge where you have a limited amount of time to find your dad, and each level decreases the total time. There's a mode where it's totally randomized which kid you get. And the one thing that is particularly stupid to me is that there is a censorship option in the menu, but it does nothing. All options keep dick and balls out no matter what. It's bullshit. I'm trying to run a YouTube channel here, but maybe it's time we move on to maybe the weirdest and most disturbing game on here, Doki Doki Literature Club. A game I'm sure at least some of you are expecting to see. This game is actually considered by a few people to be a horror game, and it's not in the sense of like a traditional horror game, but it's really just like pretty fucked up and disturbing in general. Now, a lot of people shit on this game, and I can definitely see why, but when you look at this game from a development standpoint, it's actually kind of brilliant. So the game essentially puts on the front of being a dating simulator for the better part of the first act of the game, before doing just like a complete and total 180 on you. Now, I normally shit on the dating simulator genre, and it's consistently the worst genre for sure, but I can definitely see that some effort definitely went into this game's characters. Now, the game allows you to pick your name, which is pretty typical, I think, for the genre, but I kind of ruined this game for myself. Seeing a bunch of people refer to me as Young Stroker just fucking killed me. Essentially, we play as a dude who gets convinced by his childhood friend to join the literature club at school, which we only do because we're excessively horny. The game essentially revolves around you interacting with the other members, and since it's a literature club, most of the game revolves around books and poetry. Each of the characters are also pretty distinct and honestly not horribly written. The idea here is to make a character that fits each romance archetype to ensure that the player somehow gets attached to at least one of the characters, and then slowly but surely traumatize them. There's Yuri, who fits the shy, intelligent archetype, Sairi, who's the most emotional of the group, Monica, who's the leader, and Natsuki, who is the stereotypical weeb. The game essentially forces you to choose one of the members of the literature club whether you like it or not, and there are literally 0 good endings for this game. The game gives you a hefty warning about not playing the game if you're experiencing suicidal thoughts, and that is for good reason. I also would not recommend this game unless you have some seriously thick skin. The game lulls you into a false sense of security with a bunch of generally wholesome interactions and banter to make you think it's an ordinary dating game before just literally killing everyone in front of you. And there's no way to save anybody. They all die no matter what. As weird, morbid, and honestly depressing the game is, I've actually come around to thinking that it's probably one of the best visual novels out there. And while it's definitely a lame concept, I do have to give it some props for the 180. It's pretty well done. I actually also have to give props for being able to go into the game files and just straight up delete a character for the game, which impacts the endings too. It's pretty neat. But I'm done thinking about that game for a while. You know, the game might be free, but the therapists definitely aren't, so choose carefully. Our next game is Wretched Depths, a game made based on the classic PSX engine, and man, this game actually does look and feel perfectly like a PS1 game. The game's premise is simple: explore the Misty Town and its surroundings. And wait, you can go fishing? Okay, that's pretty cool, actually. I suppose I don't really mind. So I caught a few bass, and now I guess it's time to keep looking around for a bit, and oh, there's really nothing around here. Strange. I guess I'll just head to town and see what's up there. And oh, here we go, a fucking shopkeeper. Thank God. I thought this game might be like empty or something. Okay, he sells bait, fishing gear, and nothing else. I was told this was gonna be a horror game, but it's a fishing game. Well, I guess there's only one thing to do: crack open a cold one and get hammered virtually fishing at 7 in the morning. After fishing for about an hour and getting the best gear in the game, I reached the bottom of the lake, which is just hell itself. So yippee to that one, I guess. But let's wrap this video up with the final game I brought to the table here. This game is called Gore 3, which is definitely a video. I lost my page. Gore 3 is a game that seems like it was definitely inspired by Doom and Quake, or as this review says, it's like somebody with a lobotomy tried to process Ultra Kill gameplay. This game appears to have been made before people knew how to make video games, evidenced by the unchangeable 4:3 aspect ratio. No, what the fuck? Press R to Well everyone, that's gonna do it for today. This has been the most confusing video I've ever made, but I guess I sorta had fun making it. More importantly though, the next videos are coming out around Christmas and I need your help making them. Firstly, I am doing a full Q&A video provided I get enough questions, so I need you to leave all the questions you can come up with in the comments. These can range from would you rathers to music or games, anything on your mind. But I got a few that I'm gonna answer from the previous video. What inspired me to do YouTube? Well, I've always wanted to do this in one form or another. When I was a kid I thought I'd be posting Minecraft Let's Plays, but now I just torture myself and upload it. What's your social security number? 437-3